What's up, guys, and welcome to Chat with Will Grant. We are with our co-host, Dr. Edwin Adams, and I am your main host, Will Grant. I'm super grateful for you guys joining me on another episode. I highly recommend to join in on these conversations, and the way to do that is to go over to chatwithwillgrant.com. And this way you can really interact into these conversations that we're having pretty much every single week. I'm also grateful for the ones on here live, as well as the people who are viewing later on YouTube. Today, we're going to be talking about all things nutrition and breath work, how they're related, and how we can use both of them to just feel our best as well as look our best. Dr. Edwin Adams, how are you feeling today?
Man, it is a good day, and it's great to see some repeat people coming back for even more, Will. I've really been touched and humbled by the comments that we've been getting from people who are coming on these live webinars and having a chance to ask some questions. So David, Jenny, Raymond, great to see you guys back on the webinar, Will. We had a great conversation last time about some obstacles that prevent people from accepting some of the nutrition basics that I know we will eventually get to, Will. We only got through 3 of my top 14 from my interstellar research on the top obstacles that prevent people from being their personal best with nutrition. Do you think we're going to get any farther today, Will?
I know we're going to get at least a little bit farther, but before we go farther, I kind of want to touch on it, because it's been processing more. So pretty much the main top 3 reasons of why people slip up on their diet or maybe eat the wrong things were mainly based on temptation. Many of us know chocolates and sugar and all the sugary, fattening, processed foods are bad, but we still eat them, and I think a huge part of that is because it's always around, it's always convenient, and it's just an instant dopamine surge straight to our brain. And that's why the only thing I really wanted to say is to think of these things differently than a drug to make us feel good can get really, really dangerous. To feel really bad and then to go into your cabinet and to look for comfort foods, some high sugar, high salted, bad for us food that's going to make us feel good in the right now, but harms our health. And that harms the way we're going to feel maybe tomorrow and the next week, and literally takes life from us. We have to realize that that isn't much different than a harmful drug, and just being aware of that, I think, will make us a lot more cautious on, having it in our house, feeding it to our kids, because it is one of the most addictive things. Like, what is more addictive than sugar? Honestly, I can't remember the last time that I met a normal human being who wasn't addicted to sugar. We all, if we go over 12 to 24 hours, our body starts jonesing. We need something sweet, and that is something that we all got to be aware of, to realize that, hey, AA does a really good job. And the first step to recovery is to admitting that we got a problem and that we are addicted to sugar. And I think once we can come to terms with, look, we're all addicted to this bad food that is around us all the time, tempting us, then we could start strategizing and figuring out ways to improving that. And I'm not saying to never partake in anything bad or any drug in any way. Sometimes it could be a little fun, but what I'm saying is we have to be in control. We have to be in the driver's seat, to where if we want to partake and enjoy something, if it's chocolate, if it's alcohol, if it's bad food or fried food, whatever, to know that, one, we're in control and it's limited. And that will not only make us healthier and happier, but we will actually end up enjoying the times that we partake in those a lot more by limiting them. And one of the biggest issues that I've seen is we fight it all the time. When we're trying to eat better, it's like this constant mental battle of, oh, I want sugar so bad, but I can't have it. I want sugar so bad and I can't have it. And then your life becomes miserable. Like, it reminds me, because it's so addictive, it reminds me of somebody trying to quit smoking cigarettes. you notice, especially the first couple of weeks after somebody's quitting any sort of tobacco product, they're so miserable to themselves and to everybody around them because they're so addicted and they're like relapsing. And you can see their body just getting ornery and wanting it so bad. And I think to know that and to be aware of that, and I think it's very, very important. And then as we get more in control of that, especially, I think it takes like 3 days to get all of that sugar out of our body to where our body stops really craving it. But it's really hard to get to that point, and I think that instead of constantly battling it, like I was saying, something I learned from Ronald Reagan actually was when he quit smoking, he replaced it with something, right? He didn't replace it with a good thing. He replaced it with jelly beans, something that's loaded with sugar, because he's just getting that dopamine fix somewhere else. But we can switch that into something else that gives us a really great dopamine hit. One of my favorites, like especially when I did that 8-day fast of getting through that process, is breathing. One of the best ways to get a good dopamine, serotonin, all those good drugs, those good pharmaceuticals that are already in our body, ready to make us feel good, we can activate those by breathing exercises, and I think that's really important to know, to where you are feeling stressed, you are feeling anxious. Instead of running to the cabinet, stop a minute and connect with yourself and breathe. And I think the more that we could do that step is like a repetition down a good path, as opposed to digging a rut down a negative path. Does that make any sense, Edwin?
Yeah, it really does. And I love how you aligned it to a 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, again, the first step is surrender to the fact that you have a problem. And I think we all do, me
Yeah.
included.
Like, I'm not saying I'm any better. Like, I'm addicted to sugar, like if I go over 20 hours without something, I'm craving some chocolate.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
You know,
right. So I get it, but until you get past the first step and surrender, you can't work the rest of the process. So I think that's when we enter these dietetic phases and get on the next fad, or we try something new and we go all in and swing the pendulum way to the other side, we always forget this surrender step, which I think has to be number one. Because to your point, Will, this is likened to an addiction, and it's hardwired in because we've been practicing these poor eating habits for a long time, and those habits are directly correlated to thoughts and behaviors in our head that drive these poor outcomes. So it's a process that you
you know,
have to work through and over to overcome.
and I want to make something super, super clear to every one of us. You said that his food is like an addiction. It is an addiction. Like, there is no different from the way our brain reacts to when we eat bad food. This is a real addiction, and I think, like, again, to clarify that and to know that and to surrender, I think surrender is such a good word, because the more we fight, the more resistance we will feel. We almost have to surrender to what really is so we can clarify what really is, to know what's best to go forward. But we cannot make any, you know, I don't want to make any confusion to make anyone think that our addiction to food is anything but an addiction, because it is an addiction. Our bodies are hardwired for millions of years of evolution to go towards these high calorie, high sweet, high fat foods, and going back to replacing, I mentioned replacing with breath work. That's going to be really good for the right now. But really, the more that we just replace the bad options in our cabinet for the good options, because nature gives us stuff that are sweet too, but if you're so used to having full-blown Nutella and like gummy worms and crazy processed sugar food, it's going to take a while for your body to even enjoy an apple, to even enjoy the awesome, sweet, delicious fruits that nature already gives us. But it's always good to find something to replace it. But even if you have a bunch of fruit all day, you can gain weight too. That is nature's treat. That is nature's sweet. But to replace it and to learn how to really start cooking and experimenting with good, delicious foods, because, not so much myself, because I'm not the best cook in the world, but coming from experience, my roommate cooks some of the most delicious, healthy food that I've ever had in my life. And like, he's not a professional chef, like he's a full-time professional athlete, and like, he has to eat, he has to take care of his nutrition, and that's a very important factor. And taste is something that's extremely important to him. To me, I can eat something with no flavor and just feed myself for pure function and not really be bothered. But he likes something to taste well, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's why he starts experimenting with different flavors and different vegetables and different sauces and different seasonings that can be organic and that can be nourishing and nutritious to our body. And what is the most beautiful thing about the universe is when we eat food that nourishes us, that process of growing that food nourishes the planet. And if we eat food that harms biology in our system, that same food, to grow that food, to process that food, harms biology in the earth. And that's why I could go into some statistics. Here, I'll start right now, because I just looked up a couple statistics before I came here. 108 million people, 45% of us have hypertension, have high blood pressure. And that's because of the foods that we're eating and really the way that we're breathing. But a huge part of it is we're eating processed food loaded with sugar that raises our insulin and our temperature inside our body, that then makes us mouth breathe, and that then creates this awful cycle that's making us breathe bad, and then we crave more bad food, and then it's just awful cycle. But here's another statistic here. 48% of all adults in the United States have some form of cardiovascular disease. Edwin can probably clarify this really well as well, but cardiovascular disease is essentially your body's ability to be able to pump blood or nutrients throughout its whole entire body. That's your heart. It's your heart's job to keep you alive by pumping that blood, and you want it to be flowing like healthy rivers. And that's a huge part of why we are struggling so much, why so many of us are sick today, struggling with diabetes and high blood pressure and cardiovascular disease being like the number one killer of us. And what's crazy and what blows my mind, but is beautiful at the same time, is the same things that is giving us diseases is harming the planet. Is causing more natural disasters, is causing the temperatures to raise and the oceans to become more acidic. I don't think people realize that going down the path that we're on of eating the way that we're eating, we have less than 60 harvests left of food, right? I read somewhere yesterday that we have about 50 years left of oil, so we have less than 60 years of doing all these things the way that we're doing. So it's not about if we have to change, it's about when we're going to change. We're either going to be forced, with practically a gun to our head, by survival to have to change the way that we eat, or we can start getting ahead of it now. And a lot of people don't realize it doesn't matter if you're in your 20s like me or in your 40s or 50s or 60s, but the decisions that you make today, it is up to us. It is up to us in the decisions that we're making that is going to either nourish a planet and give our next generations more than 60 harvests left and more energy and more ideas to continue to help our species flourish. Or if we keep going down this path, being addicted to all these dopamine things and addicted to all these drugs that we are, it's just going to be the path right to our end.
So clearly you need to work on your passion, Will. That message just did not translate worth a damn.
Hopefully you're being sarcastic.
Absolutely, I'm being sarcastic. Wow. I appreciate a lot of what you said, Will. Well, really all of it. And one thing really stood out, I think, is I think Jeremy walked behind you just before you said it, but I think that's a perfect example and a wonderful metaphor for us to consider that Jeremy's nutrition strategy is directly tied to an outcome that he desires. And I believe that when we don't surrender to our addiction that we have, we really haven't lived, breathed, and visualized into what it is we want to become. I mean, from an inside job perspective, that ties the nutrition strategy to that. So when we want to falter, when we feel the addiction, we're lining back up with the vision. And for an athlete, it makes a lot of sense to me, Will. But for you and for Jeremy and Clumper and the rest of the BMX team, that makes a lot of sense. But for Joe Average over here, who's just doing the 9 to 5 routine and doing the life thing in my family, sometimes I lose sight of the vision, and it then becomes really easy to divert my attention to something quick and easy to satisfy the craving, because I got to move on to other stuff, and it's not a gold medal, it is not a trophy,
Yeah.
it's not a check.
Well, here, like, let me clarify this, because like as an athlete, you almost have to be selfish to focus on that goal. But as a regular human being who maybe has a wife, a husband, a kid, a mom, a dad, you don't have that room to be selfish. Like you really don't. Like, I don't think any of us do. Like, it's not about winning a gold medal, it's about taking care of your health so you can be there for the people you care about. It doesn't matter who you are, there's somebody in your life that relies on you. There's
Yeah, I think we
somebody.
forget that. I do think that in that selflessness of that time period in life that a lot of us go through, it's not until that time span is over and you approach the midlife crisis days that you realize, oh crap, I've got to take care of my dad bod now. And
Mhm.
oh, I'm starting to have symptoms of cardiovascular disease. I need to change now. That didn't come up before.
Yeah, and that's why it is difficult, because most of us don't change until that doctor tells us that, hey, we have cardiovascular disease, or hey, we have diabetes, or we start getting real side effects like high blood pressure, or our feet hurt, or something that is bothering us is usually what's that nudge to change. But we can get ahead of that by aligning with something more important than us, because if we're just thinking about, if we're average Joe and you're just thinking about average Joe, I think it's a path of destruction, to only think about and I think the more that we can align it with something bigger than ourselves. Like, look, your diet is not just for your comfort, for you to feel good, for, like, for your own addiction. Like, your nutrition is to fuel you for whatever your drive is, or for whatever your purpose is. And the more that you can make it not about you, the more successful you're going to be, and the more motivated you're going to be healthy. And I'm not saying to eat bland and awful and
Chicken and
undelicious food.
rice. It's just chicken and rice, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, like, so and it's one thing. So, like, me and my brother, for example, we're not as specific with taste, right? Like, we'll just eat just for function. It's never really been a priority, probably from growing up hungry. Just any food is a blessing. But if you want something flavorful, that's not something you should battle. Like Jeremy said, like, he does, like everybody, one thing the way he does everything. He does it as good and as best and as, awesome as possible. So, he doesn't do a million things. He does a few things very, very well. And one is riding a bike and training and helping others, and another is nourishing himself. And he likes to have really good tasting food, which is nothing wrong with that. And he does a really good job at just trying, just experimenting, and just cooking, not only for him, but he cooks for me all the time. Like, he cooks for Clumper, he cooks for the crew, like, and we all love and appreciate it. And it's one more thing that makes him feel valuable, makes him feel good, and makes him feel great, as well as we're all eating delicious food, so it brings up the whole crew. You know what I mean? So that's a challenge right there, is try to cook something delicious for somebody that you guys care about. And I think, like, if you want good food, there's nothing more of a dopamine fix than inviting your friends over that you love and care about, giving them a good hug or handshake, inviting them in, and then cooking them some nutritious food, sitting around at a table, laughing and joking and telling each other about everything that's going on. That's a real dopamine fix. But with long-term, like a short-term investment with long-term results, which is what we need to be focusing on, is playing that long game as opposed to this quick fix. I need some sugar, and after you have a big, awesome, a nutritious meal, there's nothing wrong with maybe having a little sweet or a dessert. Just know who's in control, and you don't have to do it every day. You don't have to do it every night, and that's why I think fasting, not to go on a whole nother rampage, but that's why I think fasting is one of the most powerful things, because it puts you in control.
Yeah. So, Will, we started this conversation on the previous episode with common barriers, and they were pretty, I guess, information packed, those top three. So, emotional and stress eating was number one, lack of planning was number two, and the third most common barrier was cravings. All right, Will, quiz time. What's number four?
I haven't been very good at this. You got to just tell me.
So number four is snacking when not hungry. So I know these are going to overlap in strategy. We're talking a little bit about how to prepare your environment for success. So when you snack when you're not hungry, what is it that you're snacking on, and what volume of food are you eating? So two things I want to ask you, Will. Is it okay? Number one, this is a yes or no question. Is it okay to snack when you're not hungry? And number two, how can you use it as a strategy for satiation, knowing that once you start consuming something, it takes about 20 minutes for your body to feel full and to stop eating? So that's the two-pronged question for you.
Well, there's a lot into that. One is that scenario of just sitting there being bored and snacking when you're not hungry, that is an addiction. You know what I mean? Like, that is a pure example of, you need some sort of dopamine fix because you're not getting it somewhere in your life. So you're looking for something, and it's always going to be on the lowest hanging fruit of the sugar that's in the cabinet, where you're going to get the highest dopamine explosion with the least amount of effort. And I think that's what we have to get away from. I'm not going to say that snacking's bad. I'm not going to say that anything's bad or good or anything, but we just have to be aware of what it is, and, if you're snacking when you're not hungry, it's because you're probably avoiding your attention that needs to be somewhere else, honestly, and that is just going for the lowest hanging fruit of that dopamine explosion. That same feeling of when you're feeling that, becoming aware of that is the first step. And then realizing, like, okay, I'm not hungry, I just need a snack. What I could do is focus on what's important to me. Right then is a perfect opportunity to understand, to stop and think, why, like, what do I want to get out of today? What do I want to get out of my life? Who do I want to help?
Disrupt the cycle is what I hear you say.
Yeah. Disrupt the cycle. Find what's important to you. Find what is interesting to you, because that's the only reason why you're searching for food, is because you're looking for some dopamine. Like, you're looking for some dope. You're looking for, a surge of some feel good. So maybe instead of grabbing that chocolate in the cabinet that probably shouldn't be there, call somebody you love. Call somebody you care about. Maybe invite them for a walk in the park. Go and try to learn something that you've been wanting to learn for a long time. Like, have you ever read that book, Outwitting the Devil?
Yes.
Okay. It's another amazing one that my brother sent me from a Napoleon Hill. I highly recommend everybody who's listening to this, go to YouTube and type in Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, and you can just listen to it right on YouTube. And one of the biggest things I gained from that book is idle time is devil's time. When you're just sitting waiting for something, that's when all the devils creep in. That's when all the cravings creep in. That's when all the negative bullshit thoughts that ain't gonna serve you. That's when all of the past and the future and all the stuff that creeps in is gonna start creeping up. It's that idle time. If you're not intentional with your time, if you're not intentional with your energy, that sugar in the cabinet is going to be screaming your name, and it's going to take control of your energy if you don't.
Good point, Will. So, is there any value in this snacking when you're not hungry? If you do have that problem, to slow down maybe and spread out the snacking, or do you just stop it altogether? Like, I can't do
It's gonna
this.
be yeah, it's gonna be different for everybody. Like, look, if you know you are just absolutely addicted to it and you can't, like, you just your whole body is just putting all of its attention, I need something in my fridge, then I would honestly probably go cold turkey, because that's your body taking control over you. The best way to take control over your energy is I would probably do a fast, like maybe a 24-hour fast. And most likely, if your body is always craving that and you're losing to that, you probably may have a little hypertension. You may have a little issue with overweight. You may have a few pounds that you could lose, and every 5 pounds extra that you have on is wearing down your whole system and taking time and energy off your life. So if you're feeling that, honestly, I would recommend going cold turkey. But if it's not a real issue, just limit it. Just know who's in control. Like it's okay to grab that dopamine a little, every once in a while, but it's not okay for it to control your life.
Just
Uh,
grab a taste and satisfy that immediate urge maybe with a taste, and don't take it to the next step, which is a snack, which is more like a mini meal.
yeah, but I mean, I find, like the more you do it, the more you want it,
Yeah.
and the more you want it, the more you need it. So like the more you fast, the less you'll really care. And the more you do let yourself have that little treat, the more you're going to want to have that little treat. And I'm not saying that's bad, just be aware of it. Just know that that's how our bodies are designed to do, and just becoming aware and mindful puts you in the driver's seat most of the time.
Yeah, Will, I know I've mentioned it on here before, and you know this, but one of my favorite authors is Ryan Holiday. He is a avid studier and researcher of Stoicism, and he refers back to four virtues that I find myself referring back to a lot that I think have relevance in this arena. And the four virtues are wisdom, um, um, justice, courage, and temperance. And I
Yeah.
think two of these stand out when we're having a conversation
Wasn't it
like
one moderation, or is that
um,
in one
that.
of them?
That's basically temperance.
Okay.
Temperance really means abstinence from
Yeah.
something. So I think that has relevance here when we're talking about virtues that the Stoics felt made a man, and I say that just universally, make a person whole, is sticking to those four virtues. So to your point about cold turkey, abstinence is a way to this freedom that nutrition can bring you, good nutrition can bring you, and break the addiction cycle. Wisdom is the other one that makes a lot of sense to me in this context, is simply because now that your awareness has been heightened, and you now know that you have an addiction problem, you now have control of your thoughts and your mind, and you can take the next steps forward into owning a new process and a new addiction to a healthier process of intaking information, i.e. nutrition.
Yeah, exactly. Like, eating healthy food doesn't have to be a compromise. You know what I mean? But you still have to be in control. Like, you still have to be the one in the driver's seat to be able to abstain if you need to. And honestly, the more you fast or the less you eat, the healthier you're going to be. I think a million one different studies have proven, most of the people who are living into their 90s and who can break 100, they're not eating a lot of food. They're not letting their body get worked up too much. They're keeping their heart rates low, and they're consuming very, very little, and just know that on an empty stomach is when your body gets most of its work done, all of the good stuff. So I think to change this relationship with hunger, and to change this a relationship with food, can be extremely important. It doesn't have to be this constant battle, this constant addiction, but instead something that we could all be grateful for, and and blessed with, of actually something that's going to nourish us, nourish our family, nourish the planet, and again, putting us in the driver's seat to where we're choosing when to eat, how much to eat, not our external environment of just being addicted.
Yeah, well, I think what's clear with that commentary, Will, is that it will remain an addiction until you decide to do something different.
Yeah.
And that's a scary notion right there. It is as if the doctor's telling you you have cardiovascular disease. You will continue to have cardiovascular disease and die sooner unless you intervene and do something differently to change your trajectory of cardiovascular disease development and the outcomes of that. This is we're talking about something that has the same potential negative outcome, and you have a choice earlier than you think.
Yeah. And what is harming you is harming the planet, is harming, even the ones around you. Like, if you have a toxic diet where you're eating more toxic food, it shows in the way you interact with other human beings. It really does. And that's something I'm really starting to become more and more aware of. The more processed, we are what we eat. The more processed food you eat, I noticed that the more processed you become. The more that you're eating these foods that are creating these internal digestive battles inside yourself of your body fighting these toxins, it tends to make the human being fight their environment, because when you're having toxic, harmful stuff that you're putting inside your body all the time, your whole energy is going to be fighting something. It's going to be working against that resistance. So again, to improve your diet and to nourish yourself nourishes the ones around you, the ones that you care about, the ones that you choose to have around, the ones that you truly love and want the best for. Understand that the more you nourish your body and the more you take care of yourself, the better you will be for them. Energy is energy, and it's contagious. To raise your vibration or to raise your consciousness, raise the vibration of your environment and the consciousness of the species. And I think that's important.
Yeah, great point, Will. And thank you, David, for your comment. David said years ago he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and strange as it may sound, it was the best thing that's ever happened to him. It forced him to completely change his diet, lose 40 pounds. Wow, fist bump right there. And now he's controlling his diabetes with a healthy diet only. So that's the power of transformation right there, that you actually have at any point in your existence. You have that ability. You don't need the stimulus of bad news in order to do it. You can do it much earlier. And David, I'm so thankful you heard the call and you changed
Yeah.
your trajectory. That's amazing.
Yeah, that is super powerful, and I think that's usually what it takes, but it doesn't have to take that, like it just how David said that was one of the most, best things in his life. When I broke my leg and, the doctor was saying that I may never walk again without pain, that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because that's what made me start looking into my diet and my life and my health and how I was taking care of myself and how I was treating myself and how I was not bringing any value to anyone around me, because I was holding everyone around me down because of my own health issues, and that's something that I think is not talked about. Like, know that if you're not having a positive energy, you're a negative energy. That means that you are bringing down the ones around you. And then it's our first reaction to start looking at the ones around you like, what, I'm this way because of you guys, but if we just take control of our own energy and raise our own vibration, I think, that is the best thing that we could do for the ones that we care about. And we must know that if we are struggling with health issues, we are bringing down our tribe, so it is so important for us to take care of our health, because it's it's maybe one of the most important things that we have is our health. If you don't take care of your health, you may live to your 85, but you'll be on drugs for 20 years, just not even really living, just being stuck in this almost cocoon in this matrix of not being able to really live. As opposed to, if you do take care of yourself, you'll not only live past 85, but you'll be able to learn and travel and to love and play and to get outside and do all the things that you really enjoy doing because of the decisions you're making today.
Yeah, I think a great goal is how long can you delay the onset of prescription medication regimens? That should be the new goal.
Yeah,
Uh,
like, or if you are on any prescription regimens, the goal is health, and health is being able to have your system be able to take care of itself, without any external needed other than food, right? So if it is high blood pressure, if it is, I'm not saying just to stop your high blood pressure medication and hope and pray for the best.
nope, can't do that.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that. But that's a goal. So if okay, I take this pill for this, what can I do to get off this and support my body so it can support itself?
There you go. All right, Will, here's the next one for you. It is my number one. So of the ones we've talked about so far, this is my number one, and it is eating quickly. And you know what, Will? I can make a lot of excuses to justify why, and it's usually related to the work environment that then carries over into my home life. But man, I don't have time to eat. It is a distraction in my day, and I got to get stuff done. So it is time to scarf Orama, hope it hits bottom before I have to move on to the next thing in my schedule. So huge barrier for people, bad choices made, excess volume decisions, overreached. So what do you say to something like that?
Well, they say you never, ever, ever want to eat stressed, or you never, ever want to eat rushed. And that's for two reasons. When you're going, your digestion isn't working because all of your resources is working on the problem that you're working on, right? So when you're eating that way, that unprocessed food is going to sit there. It's going to make you feel shitty. It's going to slow down your brain processing, and it's most likely going to turn a lot into fat, because your body's using all this adrenaline. And what is energy that's not used? It's stored for fat. Okay. So, I mean, if you feel like you need to go, wait till after to eat. You know what I mean? Like, wait till after to eat. Like, it's only going to make you healthier. It's only going to make you feel better. And when your body adapts to this, your body will actually get really good at burning fat as energy. And when your body starts burning fat as energy, it's like super fuel for your brain. Then that's when your brain really starts working really well. Instead of rushing your diet and rushing your food, just wait till after, or wait till you have time. The other thinking is, we do one thing the way we do everything. Okay. So if you're rushing your food, if you're rushing your nutrition, you're probably rushing your work, and either is going to be, or both of them are going to be subpar. By subpar, I just mean not as good, so there's no need to rush in anything that you're doing. Slow down, take a minute, do whatever you're doing as best as you can, and then move on to the next thing. And if you don't have time to eat, you got to prioritize, eat later, or plan or figure that out. But the last thing I would recommend is eating on the go, rushing and stressing and eating, because that's not good for anybody.
So it's best to just skip the meal, fast during that period of time until your mind is able to slow down. You can put your fork down and enjoy the process.
Yeah, skip the meal or slow down. If you can, because almost, I would say 90% of the time, over at least, we're rushing for no reason.
Yeah. Or
like
a perceived reason, a perceived something of value. Sure.
Well, that's just a perception of, I gotta go. But over 9 times out of 10, if you stop and slow down, you'll be more effective with each step. So you won't be running like this in circles and rushing to all these unimportant things, but you'll go perfectly into the most effective steps that you need to do. So yeah, wait till after or slow down for sure.
Nice. Excellent. Well, I mentioned earlier that it kind of translates over when I get home. I still have that mindset sometimes that when food plops in front of me, scarf it down. The fork only hits the plate when it's time to pick up the next bite of food, and it's never put it down. And my wife, she has made me, when we go out to dinner, for instance, and we're enjoying the environment and the process of going out on a date, put your fork down, Ed. Make yourself wait. Chew your food, because that's where digestion starts, is right here. So spend some time chewing on your food, and before you know it, you're full, and you probably won't eat everything on your plate, which is a whole nother strategy, right?
Yeah. You know, and that has honestly been one of the biggest struggles for me. You know, that's one of the first things I noticed when I had my first meal after years with both of my brothers. We all eat like wild animals, you know, where we're, just stuffing in, it looks like we haven't eaten in weeks, and I think a lot of it is because we grew up a little bit hungry. So when we did have a meal, we had to eat as fast and as much as we possibly can. But that's been a practice for me, just like you said, Edwin, and I'm so glad you did. Is chewing is our first form of digestion. The more that we could chew our food and enjoy every bite, it's like those monks, they'll spend so much time chewing, and you want to be chewing your food till you can't chew it anymore. That's what's going to break down that food as much as possible, build all those enzymes to digest your food, and tell your whole gut microbiome, hey, it's ready for digestion. The best way to eat is as slow as you possibly can. And not to mention, like we were talking about in this book, Breath by James Nestor, the more that you chew, the healthier and stronger your jaw will be, which means the better you will breathe, and the healthier everything will sit, and the healthier you will be breathing as well. So chewing is so, so important. You want to be chewing as much as you possibly can and taking your time. Like I can't remember what book I read about, the monks and them eating, but it's so beautiful of how they eat. They stop and they sit and they take one bite and they put their fork down and they chew it till as much as they possibly can. And it's a practice of gratefulness. It's a practice of gratitude throughout their whole meal, of understanding where this food came from and being grateful for every nourishment in it, and being intentional with the nutrients in it, of knowing that those nutrients are going to heal your body. It's funny, when you're eating a cheeseburger from McDonald's, you don't really want to slow down and process what you're eating. You know what I mean? Because it's going to make you think. It's going to make you mindful. Like, oh shit, I'm probably shouldn't be doing this. You know what I'm saying? But that's what we need. That's what we need, is that raising of awareness.
So our friend Raymond's asking a question, and this is a big one, Will. So you're going to have to condense this into 2 sentences. I'm limiting you to 2 sentences, Will.
This is tough for me.
This is going to be really hard, but how do you think nutrition has changed in the last 15 to 20 years? 2 sentences, Will. That's it.
Quicker, convenient, and too many chemicals.
Okay. Yeah. That's a brilliant way to answer it. I'll give you 2 minutes to expound on that. Go.
Okay. Well, I think I tweeted something this week. It was a stat I heard from Zach Bush, that over 40%, almost half of our kids now have chronic illnesses, have some sort of asthma or overweight or allergies, have chronic illnesses, as opposed to before the 60s, before we started spraying a ridiculous amount of chemicals into our food and our agriculture. It was, I think, 1 to 2% of kids had any sort of chronic illnesses. That is frightening. That is frightening. In just 30, 40 years of spraying these toxic chemicals into our environment, and this includes the Roundup that you spray on your grass. Every time you go to a restaurant and you're buying their food loaded with antibiotics and hormones and chemicals and pesticides and herbicides and fungicides, you're giving them more power. You're voting for more of that, and I'm not saying I'm perfect and I don't go out to eat it ever, because I do, but the more we do that, the more we're causing our next generation to have issues, not only with their jaw and their breathing, but their asthma and their allergies, and serious mental issues as well. We're more sick and stressed and have more chronic illnesses than we've ever had in our life, but we have the most technology and the most money and the most resources at our doorstep.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, because simple always seems to be better. We're always trying to do something different, as opposed to, if we stop touching the earth, in 100 years, it's going to grow so dense and so abundant with so much food that we can all eat. But the more we like to monetize it and systemize it and monocrop it, the more that it just causes more issues. Most people don't realize that most of our food is grown in a monocrop. Okay, so what we do is we clear a forest, right? That's holding all of this carbon inside the soil and all of these beautiful nutrients in life. We'll clear a forest, and then we'll till the soil. Tilling the soil is one of the worst things that we can do for the earth and our own food, because it's killing all of that microbiome. It's killing all of that fungi network. It's killing that microbiology. And then we'll plant the same seed for 100 acres or for 1,000 acres. And when we do that, that instantly brings a disease. That instantly brings a sickness, because it's out of balance. That attracts some sort of pest. And then to avoid that pest, they're going to be spraying toxic antibiotic chemicals, Roundup, glyphosate, all the most awful stuff that you don't want in your body, that is literally been the perfect scale that you can see, that the more chemicals we sprayed, the more autism that we have in our children, and like it's no different. And so when you're laying this monocrop of seed, then you have 1,000 acres of the same plant, and then you're extracting all of the nutrients out of the soil, and then you're having to add in more chemicals. And this whole process is killing the planet. It's killing us. It's giving us low quality, low nutrient dense foods. And then we have to spray it with more stuff to be able to ship it for thousands of miles away. So we're eating the most low quality food that is literally just a chemical product at that point, and then wondering why we're all sick, why we're so stressed, and why we're so addicted. Like the same companies who are owning a lot of our seeds, and the same companies who own a lot of our agriculture, actually own our pharmaceuticals. Like I'm sure you heard of the company Bayer.
Monsanto. Yep. Sure
Yeah,
have.
like Bayer just bought out Monsanto, and they've been getting sued ever since, which is finally, because people are starting to realize, like, look, when you're in this agriculture place where health is supposed to be in abundance, is where they're seeing the most chronic health issues, is anywhere we're farming, and anywhere downstream farming is when we're seeing the most awful chronic illnesses.
So, Will, we've come to an interesting point in the discussion, because we are coming up on the full hour, and we didn't get as far this episode as we did last time. So we're going backwards, man, in our time.
We're not going backwards. We're going forwards. We're just not rushing,
Yeah, we put our forks down is what.
Yeah. All we're doing is we're taking our time, and we're being present, and we're being mindful, and we're having a full discussion. We're just not rushing. I think we're definitely moving forward here. Put in the comments up below, like, is this helping? Like, are you learning? Like, what do you guys think about these concepts? Because a lot of times, like, this stuff is real as can be, but a lot of times when I talk to a lot of people about this, they have no idea that all of our foods are killing us. They have no idea that tilling is one of the worst things that we could be doing for our soils and our food and our health. Like, everyone thinks, how do you grow food without tilling? Like, that is a crazy concept, because tilling is what is a huge part of what's wrong with our agriculture today. And a lot of these concepts are so almost different and so fresh and so normal, because of our educational system teaching us that we need to specialize in our crops and specialize in our food and ship our food from thousands of miles away. But now we're starting to see the result, because everyone seems to be chronically ill around us. And the ones who are eating the most food are the most chronically ill.
Yeah. Jenny's saying she's enjoying the discussion. David has a comment it's really a question, Will. So as we wrap up the last 5 minutes of the show, David's saying he's 71 and has been taking blood pressure medication for 30 years. Do you think it's possible for me, by changing my diet, to get off those medicines? He takes 3 different pills, and he knows the medications cause him some side effects, such as fatigue and lack of balance. So that's a big question, and I would love to answer part of that, Will. So I'll let you start.
Here, I'm going to give a quick answer and you give your doctor answer. Okay. I know for a fact that he could get off all of those. Like I will give everything in me that the possibility is there, and like high blood pressure. If you're taking high blood pressure pill, the first two things that you need to take control of is your nutrition and your breathing. Because those two things is determining how hard your heart is constantly having to pump. Especially if you're 71 years old, the less you eat, the better your heart is going to be able to pump. And you have to learn to take control of your breathing. Go over to my website, thewillgrant.com, and get those top 3 breathing tips. Because just the number 1 tip alone, if you perfect it, if you master that number 1 tip, can instantly drop your heart rate by 15 points. And I would recommend getting this book Breath by James and Hester, because a huge part of his book was talking about how hypertension and high blood pressure is one of the things that is constantly and instantly affected by the way that we're breathing and the way that we're eating. So yeah, for sure, I know for a fact that you can take control over your heart rate. You can take control over your blood pressure and how hard your blood has to pump. It may be more than diet, because maybe you can have the perfect diet, but if you're breathing through your mouth all day, your heart rate and your blood pressure is going to be elevated. If you're stressed all day, your heart rate, it doesn't matter if you don't eat, it doesn't matter if you have one perfect meal a day. If you're stressing all day about other things, you will still have high blood pressure. And maybe not be as high, but you have to first lower and cool down your system. And you can learn to naturally take control over your temperature gauge inside your body by your breath. And learning long inhales and even longer exhales will instantly lower your heart rate, will instantly lower your blood pressure. And I think learning to manage it yourself instead of having to use a pill takes attention, takes mindfulness. It's not easy, but is 100% possible. What do you think, Doc?
All right. So, David, wow, this is a great question you need to have with the healthcare professional that prescribed these products for you, because he knows your health better than either Will or I do. So please entertain this conversation and tell him that is a goal that you want. I think it's perfectly
That's so important. That's so important, because that's one thing I've learned all the time is if you don't express to these doctors that, hey, I have an intention to improving my life and hopefully getting off these, they're just going to keep you as a consistent and perfect customer.
That's right. So I think it is perfectly reasonable to shoot for an outcome to be off medicine using drastically different methods and processes than the ones that got you where you are today in life with 3 medicines. That being said, I think it is more reasonable to say that in the short term, you could reduce the amount of medication you're taking with some strategic interventions in breath work, diet, and exercise. If it results in you being off all medicines, fantastic. But I do believe you can reduce the volume of medicines that you're taking right now with some good strategies. I will tell you though, David, that as a natural consequence of aging, our bodies and tissue, our internal tissues harden. That is called sclerosis. So sclerosis of the arteries is a pipe that doesn't move with the beat of the heart. And as we get older, those pipes get a lot more solid and less likely to move with every heartbeat. Therefore, your blood pressure is going to go up as we age, just as a natural consequence of aging. Does that mean you need medicine? That's a great question, and you can ask your physician about that. But I have come to appreciate in the medical literature that as we grow older, we don't need to push our blood pressure to the lowest normal range. We actually need a little higher pressure to keep the squash perfused up here. And there's just a lot of data showing that the older we get, we don't need to push blood pressure all the way to the normal range, but keep it a little elevated for perfusion's sake. And David has one last question, Will, and then we'll land this boat.
And I want to say one thing, because I just looked up real quick, because I believe food is medicine. So I looked up top foods that help lower your blood pressure. And they're flax seeds, beets, bananas, hibiscus, sunflower seeds, pomegranates, sweet potatoes, garlic, fish, and leafy vegetables. So focus on your greens and focus on your fruits and veggies, and I think that'll naturally lower your blood pressure and rebalance your body as well.
Fair enough. He indicates he's been doing Wim Hof breathing each morning for 2 weeks, and he's asking about the best position for that type of breathing to be effective. I think for your age and medical conditions and dizziness, I would prefer you be lying on your back. Will, would you have any other commentary on that?
Yeah. Lying on your back is probably the best, safest place to do it. In a safe place, in your bed is a great place. Or, another thing is that you could experiment with sitting on your bed or sitting low to the ground, as low as to the ground as possible. Like this, you'll able to actually get a little bit bigger of breaths. But honestly, like Edwin said, like the safest place to do it is just on the ground, on your bed, where there's no risk at all. But by getting off your back, you are able to get more breath in, as opposed to if you're laying on your back, it can kind of limit those muscles because you use a lot of your muscles to breathe. So what I like to do sometimes is maybe do, 2 rounds laying down and then 1 round just sitting on your bed in the crisscross position, but still making sure you're in a safe place that if you take a little nap mid-session that you're just napping in your bed.
There you go. We got to protect the skull. So even if you're sitting, you can have a head injury if you're not careful. So just be mindful of your environment. Will, I got to jet to another call here in 2 minutes. I'll let you land this plane for us. Thanks everybody for showing up.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for showing up. And if you want to join more in on these conversations, do not forget, go over to chatwithwillgrant.com and reserve your spot. In this way, you can come with questions, comments, and really interact in this conversation. And also just leave any comments below on the YouTube channel as well. We're going to go through those, any recommendations of future topics. And thanks everybody for showing up. Try to have a little bit less processed food and try some fasting. Try a 24-hour fast this week. I think that's one thing that we could all make, and it'll be all good for our bodies and for our health and for the planet. Because when our body has that empty stomach, that's when it could really get all of its repairing done, all of its cleaning done, and work through a lot of those toxins. And you build up that resilience to putting you in the driver's seat over your temptations and over your cravings as well. So thank you guys so much again for showing up, and I will see you guys next week.
Awesome. Will, we've only gotten through 5 of the top 14 obstacles. We got 9 more to go. So this conversation continues next week.
Yes, let's do it.
All right. Peace out, everybody.